Let me paint you a picture you might recognize. You've been at this for 15, maybe 20 years. You know more about your function than almost anyone in any room you walk into. You've led teams, turned things around, built things from scratch, and yet you're looking at your total compensation and thinking, this is it? This is the ceiling? It's not. And I'm going to show you how to add more money to your paycheck this year. I'm Mary Southern, founder of Resume Assassin, and over the last decade, I've helped more than 4,000 people land roles at companies like Google, Microsoft, Tesla, Netflix, and so many more. But increasingly, the conversations I'm having with senior leaders aren't just about landing a new job. They're about building a different kind of career altogether. And fractional work keeps coming up because it keeps working. Here's the belief that most senior professionals carry around. Your expertise has one buyer at a time. You pick a company, you give them your best work, they pay you a salary. That's the deal, right? Here's what's actually true. Your expertise does not belong to one company. It belongs to you. The fractional model is built on that truth. What you're going to learn in this video is how to take the experience you've already built, the leadership, the systems thinking, the hard-won instincts, and turn it into income streams that don't require you to quit your job, compromise your integrity, or hustle yourself into the ground. This is the playbook. Let's get into it. Fractional work means offering your senior level expertise to a company on a part-time contracted basis, typically a set number of hours per week or days per month, in exchange for a retainer or a project fee. You're not a consultant in the traditional sense, but you're embedded, you're leading, you're just not full-time. The word fractional gets used loosely. People confuse it with consulting, freelancing, or advising. There are real differences, and those differences affect how you price yourself, how you show up, and what companies expect from you. So here's the breakdown. Fractional is part-time embedded leadership. You're running the function, attending leadership meetings, making decisions. You're the CMO, just not full-time. Advisory is guidance and accountability without execution. Advisory is guidance and accountability. You meet monthly, give direction, connect dots. Lower time commitment, lower rate. Consulting is project-based. You come in, solve a defined problem, and leave. It's deliverables focused. Freelancing is task-based execution, design, copywriting, analysis. No leadership component. Fractional is the highest value of these models because you're actually running something. That means more responsibility, but it also means significantly higher compensation and more impact. And for most senior leaders, impact is what gets you out of bed. That doesn't change because the employment model does. You're not stepping down from leadership. You're choosing how many leadership roles you hold at once. The demand for fractional executives is growing faster than the supply of people who know how to position themselves for it. This is a window, and it's open right now. 3 things are colliding at the same time. First, companies, especially Series A through Series C startups, private equity-backed companies, and mid-market businesses need senior leadership, but can't afford or don't want a full-time C-suite hire. The fully loaded cost of a full-time CMO in a major market can run $400,000 to $600,000 a year. A fractional CMO at 2 days a week might cost them $80,000 to $120,000. The math is obvious. Second, the rise of remote work made fractional more visible. You no longer need to be in the same city as your client. A fractional COO in Denver can support a company headquartered in Austin without anyone blinking. And third, the talent market is still volatile. Companies are hesitant to make full-time C-suite hires when the economy feels uncertain. Fractional gives them senior leadership without the long-term commitment. That's a hedge they're willing to pay for. So this isn't a niche or a workaround anymore. Private equity firms are now actively building fractional executive networks as a portfolio resource. Startups are listing fractional roles publicly on job boards. There are entire agencies built around placing fractional CMOs and COOs. The infrastructure for this market exists. You just need to know how to plug into it. Not everyone is positioned for fractional work, and knowing whether you are saves you from wasted time and frustrating missteps. You're a strong fit if you have 10 or more years of experience and have held senior or executive roles. You have a track record of results, not just responsibilities, that you can speak to clearly. You're comfortable with ambiguity, and you can operate without handholding or a defined organizational structure. You can manage up as well as down. You'll often be working with founders or CEOs who have really strong opinions. You're disciplined enough to protect your time and manage boundaries across multiple clients. It's a little bit harder if you're earlier in your career and haven't led a function yet. Companies are paying for proven leadership, not potential. You need a lot of structural support to do your best work, so fractional roles often have lean teams or sometimes even no teams at all. You struggle to work independently or without a clear mandate. You'll often need to build the mandate yourself. Here's the honest version. If you've been operating at a senior or executive level for any significant amount of time, you're probably more ready for this than you think. The gap isn't experience. The gap is almost always positioning, knowing how to articulate what you do in a way that makes a smaller company say, "Yes, that's exactly what we need." We'll come back to that. So not all fractional roles are created equal. Certain functions are in dramatically higher demand and command dramatically higher rates. So a fractional CMO, marketing leadership, is the single highest demand fractional role in the market right now. Early and mid-stage companies desperately need someone who can build a brand, own demand generation, and create a marketing strategy. But most of them can't afford a full-time CMO. So if you've led marketing at the VP or the C-suite level, you're sitting on one of the most in-demand skills in the fractional market. Typical retainer range is $8,000 to $20,000 per month for 2 days per week. Fractional COO. So operational leadership is critical for companies that are scaling fast and breaking things. Founders are often visionary and terrible at operations. A fractional COO who can build the systems, run the ops meetings, and create accountability structures is so valuable to a growth stage company. This role often leads to longer engagements because operations is sticky. Once you build the infrastructure, they don't want you to leave. A typical retainer range is $10,000 to $18,000 per month. Fractional CHRO, or an HR leader, so people strategy, culture, and HR infrastructure are chronically under-resourced in smaller companies. A fractional HR leader who can build compensation frameworks, handle employee relations, lead recruiting strategy, and create a real people function is an enormous asset. This role has exploded post-pandemic as companies try to rebuild culture and retention strategies. A typical retainer range is typically $6,000 to $15,000 per month. Fractional VP of operations or head of ops, below the COO level, but it's just as impactful, especially for companies that aren't ready for a full COO, but are drowning in process debt. This is the person who builds the Notion workspace, creates the SOP library, standardizes cross-functional workflows. Extremely high demand in the $5 million to $30 million revenue range. Typical retainer range, $5,000 to $12,000 per month. These numbers are not theoretical. They're based on what the market is actually paying right now. And here's the part that tends to make senior leaders do a double take, okay? At 2 fractional clients per month, a fractional CMO is potentially looking at $16,000 to $40,000 a month on top of a current salary. That's the math that changes the conversation. Understanding the buyer's mindset is the single most important thing you can do to position yourself well in the fractional market. They're not hiring you because you worked at a Fortune 500 company. They don't care about your brand names the way a large employer might. What they're buying is your ability to solve a specific, painful, present tense problem faster than they could solve it themselves and without the overhead of a full-time hire. Here are 3 things fractional clients are actually paying for. Number one, speed to competence. They need someone who can assess their situation, identify the gaps, and start making decisions within weeks, not months. They don't have a runway for a 6-month onboarding curve. Two, pattern recognition. You've seen this problem before. You've seen how it plays out. You know the shortcuts, the landmines, and the path that works. That institutional wisdom from your career is the product. And three, execution without ego. Smaller companies are often nervous about bringing in a big company executive who will try to over-engineer everything or build an empire. They want someone who gets things done with the resources available, not the resources they wish they had. So when you walk into a fractional pitch conversation, the founder or CEO sitting across from you is asking themselves one question: can this person solve my problem, or will they create new ones? Your job is to make the answer to that question feel obvious. That means leading with their problem, not your background. Pricing is where most senior leaders undermine themselves before they even get started. They default to an hourly rate, they anchor on their current salary, and they leave enormous money on the table. Here's the math that makes hourly pricing self-defeating. Take a VP of marketing making $200,000 a year. That breaks down to roughly $96 an hour. So they go to market at $100 to $150 an hour for fractional work, thinking they're being fair. But here's what they're missing. Their 2 days a week of fractional work isn't worth 2 days of their salary. It's worth what that work produces for the company. And if your marketing strategy generates $2 million in pipeline, you're widely underpriced at $150 per hour. So price on retainer, not hours. The fractional market runs on monthly retainers. This is the right model for several reasons. First, it creates predictability for you and for the client. Second, it removes the perverse incentive to drag out work to bill more hours. And third, and most importantly, it shifts the conversation from time to value. Start with the fully loaded cost of the full-time hire they would otherwise need to make. Full-time CMO at $300,000, fully loaded, means you're saving them over $200,000 by going fractional. Price accordingly. 2 days per week fractional work should start at a minimum of $6,000 to $8,000 per month for senior level work. For C-suite, start at $10,000 and go up from there. Anchor in the first conversation, not the second. If you wait to discuss price until they're already sold, you've lost leverage. Never discount your rate for a smaller company. Adjust your scope. Fewer hours, narrower focus, but not your rate per hour of work. Your expertise does not cost less because their budget is smaller. The biggest pricing mistake isn't charging too much. It's charging too little and then resenting the work because the compensation doesn't feel right. Know your number. Say it out loud before you get into a conversation. Own it. The right client won't negotiate you down to nothing. And if they do, that's important information about whether they'll value your work. You're not charging for your time. You're charging for decades of judgment. Price it that way. The first one is the hardest. So you're probably wondering, how the heck do I land my first fractional engagement? And the first one is always the hardest. Not because the market isn't there, it absolutely is, but because most people don't have a system for finding it and don't know how to position themselves for it when they do find it. Step one, get absolutely clear on your ICP. ICP means ideal client profile. Before you do anything else, define who you want to work with. What stage company? What industry? What problems do you solve? The rigor you put into this upfront is what separates people who land clients quickly from people who spin their wheels for 6 months. Step two, look at your existing network. Your first fractional client is almost certainly someone you already know or someone 1 degree removed. Think about former colleagues who went to smaller companies, founders you've met through your career, investors or board members you've crossed paths with. These are warm conversations and not cold pitches. Start here. Step three, be searchable for the right problem. This is where your LinkedIn profile becomes a business development tool, not just a document. Your headline, your about section, and your featured content should all signal clearly, this is the problem I solve. This is who I solve it for, and this is what working with me looks like. We'll talk more about this in just a minute. Okay, step 4, use the right platforms. LinkedIn, still the most important. More on positioning in a moment. Intro.co, Catalant, Expert 360. Platforms built specifically for fractional and advisory placements. Private equity and VC networks. So many PE firms maintain lists of fractional executives they trust and refer to their portfolio companies. Getting on those lists is high leverage. Fractional executive communities. So there are active Slack groups and communities where fractional leaders share referrals. Find one in your function. When someone asks you what you do, you need a single sentence that makes them say, I know someone who needs that. Something like, I work with Series B companies as a fractional COO. I come in for 2 days a week and build the operational infrastructure that lets them scale without breaking. That's specific. That's clear, and that's referable. The dream is multiple clients, multiple income streams, full autonomy. The nightmare is being spread so thin that you're not doing good work for anyone. The difference between these two outcomes is systems and boundaries. Most experienced fractional executives will tell you the same thing. 2 to 3 engagements at a time is the sweet spot. Below 2, you're leaving money on the table and your income is too vulnerable to a single client. Above 3 or 4, you're standing to compromise quality and your own sanity, unless your engagements are very light touch advisory work. The most common mistake new fractional leaders make is trying to context switch constantly throughout the week. Client A on Monday morning, client B on Monday afternoon, back to client A on Tuesday. It's cognitively expensive and it leads to errors. The better model, dedicate specific days or half days to each client. Tuesday and Thursday belong to client A. Wednesdays belong to client B. Your brain adapts to the rhythm and your work quality is dramatically higher. If you're working in the same industry across multiple clients, you need clear agreements up front about confidentiality and non-competition. Most sophisticated fractional clients expect this conversation. Having it proactively in writing protects you and it builds trust. Not having it is how fractional careers end really badly. The burnout in fractional work usually comes from one of two things: underpricing, which means you need more clients to make the math work, or poor boundaries, which means clients are calling you on your off days and you're answering. Both of these are solvable, but you have to decide up front that your time is the product and treat it accordingly. If you want fractional clients to find you, or if you want to walk into a referral conversation and be immediately credible, your LinkedIn profile and your professional narrative need to do specific work. And right now, most senior professionals' profiles are built for a job search, not a fractional practice. There's a huge difference in positioning. A profile built for a job search says, here's my history, here's where I've worked, here are my responsibilities. A profile built for fractional work says, here's the problem I solve, here's who I solve it for, here's proof that I solved it before, here's how to work with me. That's fundamentally different. Even if the underlying experience is identical, the posture shifts from candidate to operator. And that shift changes how people respond to your profile, your outreach, and your conversations. So here are some really specific changes that you can make today. Your headline. So move away from your title. So Chief Marketing Officer at XYZ. And toward your value proposition, fractional CMO, helping growth stage companies build marketing engines that scale, B2B and SaaS. That headline is searchable, it's specific, and it self-selects your clients. Your about section, lead with the problem you solve, not your career story. The career story goes in the middle as proof. The call to action, how to engage you, goes at the end. The experience section, frame your past roles around outcomes, not responsibilities. Every fractional client is reading your history to answer one question. Has this person solved a problem like mine before? Make that answer obvious. The featured section. Okay, this is prime real estate. Use it for a short piece of content about your work, a case study, or even a clear description of your fractional offering. Think of it as your landing page. If you're combining fractional work with an active job search, or if you're building a portfolio career and may eventually want a full-time role again, your resume needs to tell both stories cleanly. Fractional work on a resume can look unfocused if it's not framed correctly. The way to frame it is to list it as a business under your own name, with the clients listed underneath as engagements. That turns a series of gigs into a leadership track record. That's a very different read. This is one of the most common things I help senior leaders with at Resume Assassin, repositioning a career narrative that's mixing employment and fractional work into something that's coherent, compelling, and strategic. If your profile isn't doing this work for you yet, that's the first thing to fix. Everything else in this video is tactical. This one is foundational, and if you don't make this shift, the tactics won't land. The employee mindset at its core is I provide my time and expertise. Someone else is responsible for finding the work. Someone else is responsible for finding the work. Someone else sets the priorities. Someone else manages the client relationship. I show up and deliver. This mindset is not a character flaw. It's what the traditional employment model trains into you over decades. And it works really well until it doesn't, until the salary ceiling, until the layoff, until you realize you have no leverage because the value you've created lives in a company that owns it, not in a practice that you own. The operator mindset says, my expertise is a product. My time is the inventory. My reputation is the brand. I decide who I work with, what I charge, what I take on, and how I grow. The discomfort in that transition is real, and so is the freedom. Most people who make this shift describe a specific moment when it clicked. It's usually when a fractional client thanks them in a way that a boss never did, or when they realize that 3 months of fractional work generated more income than their annual bonus, or when they get a referral from one client to another and understand viscerally that the asset they've been building isn't a resume. It's a reputation and a market. You've spent years building expertise that companies will pay serious money for. The question is whether you're going to keep selling it one buyer at a time, on their terms, at their price, or whether you're going to decide that you are the CEO of your own expertise. That decision doesn't require you to quit your job tomorrow. It just requires you to start thinking differently about what you have and what it's worth. The salary cap is not a ceiling on what you're worth. It's a ceiling on what one employer will pay. Those are very different things. Okay, here's what you just walked through. The fractional market is real. It's growing and it's underserved by people who know how to operate in it. The functions in highest demand, CMO, COO, HR, and ops leadership, are commanding retainer rates that can add 6 figures to your annual income without requiring you to leave your current role or blow up your career. The framework is straightforward. Get clear on your ICP. Price on value, not time. Build a pipeline through your existing network first, and position your LinkedIn and resume as business development tools, not just career documents. The harder part is the mindset. If you've been operating at a senior or executive level for any significant amount of time, you already have everything it takes. You just need to point it in a different direction. So here's what to do this week. Write down the one problem you solve better than almost anyone you know. Be specific. Identify 5 people in your network who are at companies that might need that solution. Not to pitch, just to reconnect and have a real conversation. Look at your LinkedIn headline and ask, does this tell someone what I do and who I do it for? If not, rewrite it today. If you want help with the positioning side of this, getting your LinkedIn and resume to work as a fractional practice development tool, not just a job search document, I can help. Head to resumeassassin.com, schedule a 15-minute consultation with me today. I'd love to get you in front of the right opportunities. If this landed for you, subscribe. I release new videos every single Wednesday. I'll see you in the next one.